What we're going to learn how to do is take an algebraic expression, meaning an expression that has variables in it, and rewrite it as a verbal expression, which is to convert it into English or the math version of what English is. In other words, what we're asking is when we look at this first expression here, how do we say it out loud? Well, the first part is pretty obvious because the first thing that we see is the number 3. So if I was going to say this out loud, the first thing I would say would be 3. Now, the next question is, what's happening in between the 3 and that variable x? Right here in this spot, what's happening? In other words, what operation is occurring? Is this addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division? And the answer is multiplication. Multiplication is the only operation in math that you do not have to write a symbol for. If it was addition, we would need a plus sign. If it was subtraction, we'd need a minus sign, and so on. But for multiplication, you don't need to put the multiplication sign. If there is no sign, we assume it's multiplication, and the term for that is implied multiplication. Implied multiplication means we don't have a symbol, but it's multiplication. Multiplication is the only one that works like that. Okay, so after the 3 is multiplication. So we'll say 3 multiplied by. Or you could say 3 times if you like. That would be all right too. In fact, let's put that on there. We could also do 3 times instead of multiplied by. Okay, multiplied by what? So it's being multiplied by a variable x, but not just an x. It has that exponent of 4 right there. And the way that we say it's got an exponent of 4 is to the 4th power. So we would say 3 multiplied by x to the 4th power. And so this is how we say this phrase out loud. 3 multiplied by x to the 4th power, or 3 times x to the 4th power. Okay, let's take a look at the one right next to it. We've got a 5 and then a z and an exponent of 2 plus 16. So if I was going to say this out loud, I would start off by saying 5. Just like on the last problem, we have some implied multiplication going on right in here. Implied multiplication. If there is no symbol, it's multiplication. So in between the 5 and the z is multiplication. So we can say 5 multiplied by, or 5 times. And then we've got a z, and that z has an exponent. And when you have an exponent of 2, there are actually 2 different ways we can say that. One of the ways we can say it is 5 multiplied by z to the 2nd power. Z to the 2nd power. But you may have also heard, when we have an exponent of 2, using the word squared. We could say z instead of to the 2nd power, we could say squared, z squared. Both of those are correct. And then after that, we have an operation that is not multiplication because it's got a plus sign. So to the 2nd power plus 16. So the way that we would say this expression out loud is either 5 multiplied by z to the 2nd power plus 16, or you could say 5 multiplied by z squared plus 16, or instead of using multiplied by, you could say times, like 5 times z squared plus 16. And those are all correct ways of saying that mathematical expression.